Now, Australia have had a great cricketing year. They were crowned World Test Champions in June. A month later, in July, they beat their arch rivals England to retain the Ashes. In November, they were also the ODI World Cup champions after beating India. Throughout the year, the Aussie squad has been largely unchanged. Seasoned players like Captain Pat Cummins, Big Show Glenn Maxwell and Pace King Mitchell Starc have been part of the setup. Another player who has been a constant for the baggy greens has been David Warner. Now, 37-year-old David Warner is a former captain and Test vice-captain for Australia. He's quite popular in India, especially for his on-field dance moves, but Warner is facing quite a bit of a harsh criticism. His former teammate Mitchell Johnson is not holding back at all. Johnson has now taken multiple digs at Warner, but why is this really happening? Here's a primer for you. Now see, Warner is expected to play his final Test series for Australia in a few days. Pakistan are in Australia for a 3-test match series. The first match will be played next week, but the series will end in January next year, and this will be Warner's final Test stint for his country. Warner's phenomenal journey in Test cricket is nearing an end, and what a career the batter has had. Warner has batted in 199 innings out of 109 matches. He has scored over 8,000 runs. He's only the 7th Australian batter to cross the 8,000 run mark in Test cricket. His highest score was when he hit a triple century against Pakistan back in 2019. Warner remained unbeaten at 335 runs and was awarded Player of the Match. Warner has played some big innings with his bat. He has scored 25 centuries and 36 half-centuries in his illustrious long Test cricket career. Now, Test cricket, as we know, is arguably the toughest format when compared to ODIs and T20s. It takes a toll on you physically and mentally. And the numbers show that Warner has been a star performer for Australia. Well, not according to former teammate Mitchell Johnson. You see, after such an illustrious career, any cricketer would expect a farewell. So does Warner, but Mitchell doesn't feel Warner deserves one. That's because Johnson thinks Warner was part of one of the most controversial moments that marred Australia cricket. In 2018, the Australian Test team were accused of using sandpaper to tamper the red ball. It came to be known as the infamous sandpaper scandal. The captain was Steve Smith, but the vice-captain was David Warner. They were both charged by Australian Cricket Board and was sanctioned. Warner was further charged for developing the plan in the first place, and he was the first to respond to the charges. There was a 2-year suspension or a ban on both Smith and Warner. Warner decided to take a break from cricket and, of course, spend time with his family. But in 2019, the bans on Smith and Warner were lifted and they both returned to play Test cricket. Now, it's because of the sandpaper scandal that Johnson has some scathing remarks for Warner. Here's what he said in an article that he wrote. He said, and I quote, "It's been 5 years and David Warner has still never really owned the ball-tampering scandal. Now, the way he is going out is underpinned by more of the same arrogance and disrespect to our country. As we prepare for David Warner's farewell series, can somebody please tell me why? Why a struggling Test opener gets to nominate his own retirement date? And why a player at the centre of one of the biggest scandals in Australian cricket history warrants a hero's send-off?" Now, Johnson's statement has spread like wildfire through the Aussie camp and really world over. The first to respond was Usman Khwaja, who called Warner his hero. Next in line was Glenn Maxwell. He said, and I quote, "Warner has been an absolute champion of Australian cricket." It looks like there are a few takers of Johnson's stinging criticism, but it has definitely created a rift among the Aussies. And Johnson is not backing down either. On the podcast called The Mitchell Johnson Show, which is co-hosted by journalist Bharat Sundaresan and Johnson himself, the Aussie pacer spoke about why he has written multiple articles calling out Warner. The first one was written in April, where Johnson demanded accountability from Warner. During the podcast, Johnson spoke about why he decided to continue writing against Warner. Here's what he revealed.
When I responded to that, and then I got a message from Dave, which was quite personal, and I tried to ring him to try and talk to him about it, which I've always been open. I know I've been open to the guys. When I finished playing, I said, if I'm in the media and I'm writing things or saying things that you don't like, just come and speak to me. Like it was never a personal thing then until probably this point. This is probably what drove me to writing the article as well, part of it. it's definitely a factor for sure.
Now, clearly, things have gotten personal between the two Australians. When asked about whether Johnson really meant the dig at Warner, now he said, "I don't know whether I regret it. I'm only repeating what's happened. It's probably the way I said it. It's taken the article down in a different path in a way. I do maybe wish that I could have said it in a different way, or maybe just left it out. It is what it is." That's what he said, and at least that's what Johnson is saying. After Warner, Johnson went after another Aussie, George Bailey, who's now the chairman of selectors for Australia cricket. In the same article where Johnson dissed Warner, he shot back at Bailey. Johnson questioned if Bailey has close relationships with some of the Aussie players, indirectly questioning why Warner was picked in the Test team in the first place. Talking to Bharat on the podcast, Johnson revealed that he had earlier gotten a stinging text message from Bailey too, regarding a separate article Johnson had written. And now, after the Warner piece, Bailey again retorted, indicating that all was not well up there with Johnson, which was rightfully rankling and upset Johnson.
And which is actually, that's another point, which is really disappointing, to say that, to ask if I'm okay because I've had mental health issues is pretty much downplaying my article and putting it on mental health, which is quite disgusting, I think. But
now, Johnson and Warner were teammates between 2009 and 2015. In 2013, George Bailey was also a part of their team. These players have shared their locker room together. They've won matches for their country together, but things have clearly taken a completely different turn. Their infighting is personal and is spilling out on the professional stage. Australia is known to stick together like a band of brothers, through thick and thin, through spats and ugly controversies. They always have each other's backs, no matter what the accusations or allegations have been. This is the first time an Aussie is calling out one from his own band, one that he believes to have made a disgraceful contribution to Australia cricket. Now, if I were an Aussie fan, I'd be internally screaming because of how the Johnson and Warner rivalry is playing out.